My name is Varun Anand. I'm a co-founder at MPHRX. We're a healthcare technology company based out of Gurgaon with offices in New York. Cloud computing is a very powerful strategy for hospitals as well as healthcare providers to adopt today because it allows them to uh, you know, adopt new technologies without having to make significant investments which they've traditionally needed to do. Instead of having to spend lakhs and lakhs and sometimes crores of rupees in terms of building that infrastructure, they can actually leverage a common infrastructure to be able to come out with new applications. They can leverage their operational budgets rather than make huge capital expenditures, and that's actually a big advantage of using cloud computing in today's ecosystem. I think the biggest challenge right now is around understanding patient data privacy and security of that information. And of course, that's been a big hindrance in terms of adoption of cloud computing. There has to be more understanding and more technologies available today that comply with certain regulations. So, for example, what we do is that we comply with regulations globally, such as HIPAA and HITECH, which talk and specifically mandate how is patient data and privacy, supposed to be handled. And we bring those same best practices to all of the countries that we currently operate in. That I think is a big enabler in cloud computing because you suddenly have these best practices that can be put in without a lot of investment from the hospital side. I think one of the biggest challenges is the fact that a patient's health record, there's a global problem of the fact that health data is not interoperable today. At the end of the day, a patient's health record is spread across multiple systems. You've got labs, you've got imaging, you've got multiple clinical systems. There is no one single place where all of that unified view comes in. The second big challenge is that health information is constricted to the four walls of the hospital. When a physician or when a patient needs to have access to their own records today, they're still doing it in very archaic ways. Using a platform such as ours, we not only standardize and aggregate that data together, but also make it available to doctors as well as to patients using web as well as mobile applications today. And that really bridges the gap. The other third piece, which is a big challenge, is at the end of the day, information that is captured in a hospital can be also augmented by information that is captured by the patient themselves. When they go out, the information coming in from their glucometers, what they've eaten, what their symptoms are, based on their clinical conditions, there are various care pathways that they can put on. That information also is right now not captured at all. So that's another big challenge which we are trying to address. Well, one big space there is around patient engagement at the end of the day, right? So when a patient today comes to a hospital, gets procedures done, has a lot of services done within a hospital. When they go outside the hospital, they can actually be engaged with their clinicians. They can be engaged with the care providers using applications that leverage cloud technology. Whenever the patient is outside, if it's a diabetic patient, the patient can themselves record their glucometer readings. They can record a lot of their symptoms and make it available to doctors as well as their nurses and their care teams, which can help them proactively take care of their patients in a much better manner. So those are patient engagement is one space which I feel has a big potential to be enabled using cloud technologies today. We're a technology company. We've actually built this platform called Minerva, which is today, we've had several large health systems across the world. In the US, North Shore LIJ, NYU, Baylor College of Medicine. In India, Max, Artemis, Medanta, Dr. Lal Path Labs, they're all our customers. Plus we've got, so we've actually built this platform which today is selling in about 100 countries through major partners like ACFA, Dell Computers and Tech Mahindra. And they're actually using this platform to drive that particular case, patient engagement through interoperability of that health information. And what we've done is that we've leveraged a new healthcare standard. So one of the things that we really believe in is the fact that you cannot solve interoperability by coming up with your own proprietary standards. So we've actually leveraged something called FHIR, which is an open health standard. We're one of the first companies to have embraced it. And using FHIR, we've actually been able to drive standardization of health information, regardless of whatever systems the hospital is using today. The idea is not to replace their existing systems, not to make doctors change their behavior a lot, and to change the systems and the ways that they're currently operating, but be on the back end, be able to assimilate that information through their existing systems, and then drive patient engagement and interoperability of health data. The business model. So one thing which is very interesting, which you can really do at when you're operating in a cloud model, is not to become very heavy in terms of a capital expenditure for a hospital system. So we don't want to become a deterrent for health systems to adopt these technologies. In fact, we operate on a pure operational model, so it's a pay-as-you-go kind of a service, where when health systems basically adopt our platform, they actually pay for the number of patients or the number of doctors that are using the system, vis-a-vis just paying a huge lump sum at the beginning of the overall implementation. That's our business model. It's software as a service, essentially. Interestingly, we've actually done this a little differently. We have been bootstrapped for the most part of the last 5 years. We've actually grown completely on revenues. We started with about 3 people in a small office. We're now a team of a little over 100. And over the last 5.5 years, we essentially were working very closely with partners, healthcare systems globally, building these business models, building revenue, which will sustain and grow us. Very recently, a couple of weeks ago, a strategic partner actually announced that they made a strategic investment in the company. The reason why we raised that strategic investment is because now that we've understood what problem we're solving, we have a scalable and a sustainable solution around it. Now we've raised that money to grow. And plus, over the last year, we've actually grown in terms of the number of countries that our system is being used in. So we now actually raised a round of funding to be able to grow even faster. In terms of healthcare, I think globally there is a big push, and it's whether you look at the US, whether you look at UK, Europe, everywhere. I think there is a big push in interoperability, primarily because even in developed healthcare markets, there have been huge amount of investments that have gone into building systems. India is still somewhere midway there. But even in the mature markets, there's been a huge amount of investment, and those investments have not solved the fact that the basic problem that a patient or a doctor does not get their full view of information regardless of wherever the patient is. So there is a huge gap in terms of platforms that can provide that interoperability, which we are trying to fill, and that's a global trend that we've seen. In India, it's actually the implementation of that is very different. Like we were talking before, solutions that are done in the US or UK, they might be great solutions, but the fact is that you can't bring them vis-a-vis in the same shape and form in India, because the population here is very different. We're operating at a completely different scale. While the problem statement is the same, the solution and the way we're going about it is very, very different. For example, India is a very big mobile, there has to be a big mobile push, because that's where most of the population today is interacting on. And and other markets are not so much on the same lines. It has been very interesting. It has over the last couple of years, we've actually seen a lot of interest in terms of solving these problems. Specifically, when you look at India, what's happening is that healthcare has been typically transactional. Right? A patient comes, gets a procedure done, and then basically leaves. There is no real reason why the patient keeps on coming back to the same hospital or the same care team. And the adoption of patient engagement models in India has been driven by the fact that they want to move this from a transactional healthcare model to, when they're actually taking care of a patient over a longer period of time. And I think hospitals in India specifically are realizing that, and that's when they're making a lot of these investments today, and I think those investments will continue to grow. Our future plans actually, we've built this platform. Obviously, it is driving patient engagement and a lot of big data analytics, because we're collecting a lot of information for hospitals and for our customers. But that's going to continue to grow globally. Our big term plans is also to create this as an ecosystem. In today's world, we realize that as a company, we can't solve every clinical problem in the world. But the fact is that hospitals as well as clinical providers today face that same challenge, where there are great ideas out there of specifically like, can I create a great way of managing a patient with diabetes, or can I come up with a mechanism with which I can identify someone with congestive heart failure based on their cholesterol readings. We actually want to open this up as an ecosystem where third-party developers can also come and implement these great ideas in the form of applications on top of our platform. Those are our big plans, apart from the fact that we're obviously scaling up and we're expanding globally quite rapidly.